Good day, my viewers. You are now listening to the latest edition of the Masculine and Feminine podcast. I'm your host, Maximilian Robinson. Today, we will be discussing one of the various things regarding the topic of race and the culture behind it. We will deep dive and discuss the topic of race, debating on many differences and the many similarities between what a male thinks, myself, and what a female thinks, which I will be bringing my guest hosts on later today. But before I begin, it is important to know the difference between race and ethnicity. We will be covering this throughout the topic of discussion today. We will be discussing many different things regarding race in general, but it is important to know that I will be explaining my personal insight on how I feel about the topic of discussion from what I learned, of course, but we will also be comparing another person's perspective, which happens to be my close friend, Joanna Owusu-Daku, and her intake on race. So just briefly to talk about who she is and why I'm bringing her on the show, I decided to bring her on today because she is a soon-to-be licensed nurse. So she is studying in the nursing program. She's about to graduate like myself, but she is very, very intelligent. And I've always known this since I've known her. We've known each other for about 4 years. But Joanna has a different kind of intellect that many people need to hear on this podcast today. So without further ado, I would like to invite my friend Joanna to the show. Joanna, I just wanted to say welcome on to the Masculine and Feminine podcast today. I'd like to know, how are you doing and what's been going on in your life so far?
Hello, thank you so much. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling tired, actually, to be honest. I'm tired, but I'm great. Thank God that I don't feel depressed. I'm okay. I missed my train today. It's been hectic. It's been a hectic day, but it's been good. So thank you for asking. Today, as I said, I missed my train earlier this morning. But after that, I've just been doing errands. I finished the semester, so I'm really happy about that. Which is why I'm actually still happy, even though, today didn't go as planned. But I'm still very happy because I only have one more semester left, and after that, I graduate. So it's really exciting. But yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to the show. It's honestly a privilege to have someone want to know what I'm thinking, to be asked what my thoughts are in a certain matter. In a certain matter, because not everyone asks for your opinion, right? It means that your opinion is valued, and so it's very much a privilege. I really appreciate it. So thanks.
Well, my condolences, Joanna, that you missed your train today, and I hope that this interview will make it a lot more comfortable and that you'll be in a better mood after the end of this podcast episode. But without further ado, I would like to ask you, Joanna, what is your overall opinion on race? Now, feel free to give your personal insight on what is race in your definition, how you feel is portrayed in society, because where we live here in America, race is a big thing. But if you have your own personal intake on race that might be different from America's perspective, please feel free to explain and say why you feel the way you do about race. But I personally would just love to know from you, Joanna, how do you feel about race? Why or why not do you think it's important? And how do you portray it in society today? How do you apply race to your own life, if applicable?
What do I think about race? I honestly think, to be honest, that Americans take race way too deep. I feel like race is a thing everywhere. Well, I'm going to say race is a thing in Europe and America. Anywhere where there's a lot of diversity, race is a thing. But I feel like in America, it's just taken too deep. Like, our jokes are based on race. Like, white people are like this, and then we laugh. Or black people are like this, and we laugh. And I feel like usually, actually, when we're talking about race, it includes Asians, it includes Pacific Islanders. But I think because of the history, of America, of this country, we usually associate race with white or black. Like, I feel like Asians tend to be out of the mix. I feel like it just has to be it's just usually like a white or black thing. And it's just so ingrained. I feel like it's so dividing, is what I believe. You know what I mean? Like, it's so dividing. Whereas, like, yeah, as I already said, like, we make jokes, white people, black people, and it's like, it comes to a point where it's like, someone's giving a story and we always have to, well, I don't know about everyone else, but I feel like for a lot of people, it's like, we have to know, is a person white, is a person black, is a person Asian, is a person, you know what I'm saying? Like, is a person Hispanic, although Hispanic is not a race, but I'll get to that later. But just different, but I feel like it's so hard to get out of that because it's so ingrained. Like, just anywhere we go to school, race is a thing. We're also being educated on it in school as well, like the racial past, the racial history, which is not a bad thing, but I feel like it's just really dividing. I noticed that it's not the same in Europe. I know that for a fact. I feel like it's just America that race is a big thing, and I don't know. I don't like it. I feel like, as I said, it causes division. Yeah, we have to be more unified. I feel like when we focus so much on people's race and we make jokes off of it, and we kind of like, white cooking is like this, black cooking is like that. It's just like, no, it's just not good. So, yeah.
Wow, Johanna, I just wanted to first initially say thank you for giving your insight on this topic. I know it is very touching and sensitive to talk about, but I really do appreciate your level of intelligence here and giving your personal perspective on how race is portrayed to you. I do say, and I will say, I agree with your standpoint. I do feel that we as Americans take race to drastic proportions. And in fact, now that I'm thinking about it, what I learned from my class, I took a race and multiculturalism class. I read one of the books from Charles Taylor's Multiculturalism, Examining the Politics of Recognition. Inside of there was a point that you kind of brought up yourself, in the fact that you mentioned that white and black are the two main races that are always predominantly talked about. However, when you mention the Asian race, that's a race that you rarely, in your words, don't hear too many jokes about. And it's not as talked on as you would expect, which is very, very interesting, because when I was reading this book, I ran into a section where it talks about cultural recognition and in various areas around the world. And one of the things it told me is that the people determine recognition. So that standpoint is very striking, because we as people, the mass majority, make the decisions in life. For example, we can go anywhere in the world. Let's say we're going out together. Let's say you and me are going out to this nightclub event, and we happen to be gathered around several hundred people. But we see most of the people in the crowd from various different backgrounds, and we see certain people that look as a hybrid. And what I mean by that is they're not fully white or they're fully black. We don't know because we're only basing it off of their skin tone. So, for example, we could say this person is a white person. Yet, if we get to know that person better and we get to know that person well, we could end up finding out that that's not the case. They have some family that are from Nigeria, or maybe they have just relatives that are from a black society. So there is a very, very unique situation that I read in this chapter and I read in this book, because the fact that the people determined recognition is a very, very hard phrase, not only for myself, but also just reading it in the book. Also, there's many different other challenges of cultural recognition. Many people, like in America today, we had the Black Lives Matter movement. I know that we as black people tend to feel oppressed when our needs are not met or we're not being heard the right way, because we feel that our lives are being overshadowed by the white supremacists. And that can be a hard topic to talk about because we are constantly making different movements to be known in society, no matter our race, gender, ethnicity, religion. All of these things play a part. And it's not just the Black Lives Matter movement. There's also the National American Indian Heritage Month, where we're trying to celebrate our natives who were here before we were as people. And we also have, aside from the race aspect, we also have the feminist movement. We also have the LGBTQIA movement. We have so many different movements that help to portray people, that help to put us in groups, that help to identify ourselves. And along with reading later on in that book, I also found identity development, because human identity is created in response to our relations. So we as people might identify as black. So I might identify as black, but I may like things that appeal more to white people. It's just something that we as a society help to determine. And in this reading, it really helped to signify that what we view as a unit, not just one person in society, but as a unit, what we view in life is what the overall feeling is about that particular subject. So if we think this person is white, then they're white, even if they might not be. If we feel like they're black, then they're black. If we don't identify the Asian race, then we don't identify it as significant as maybe the white and black race. It just depends on the mass majority. But carrying on, I would like to dive into another deep topic, because I think this conversation has been going very well, but I wanted to get your insight on, do you know the difference between race and ethnicity? Now, I'm not trying to test your knowledge because you are very intelligent, but I would like to know what's your overall feeling about the two. Can you give me two definitions for both? Could you tell me specifically the differences between race and ethics? Or do you think they're both related together? Do you think they're two the same thing? Or do you think they're two the opposite thing? Either way, tell me, what is your overall opinion on race and ethnicity?
So the difference between race and ethnicity. Race is a way to classify society based on physical features. So usually it's based on skin tone. Race is pretty surface level because it has to do with physical features. And usually when we talk about race, it has to do with it kind of gives, like, there's nothing more to race than just physical features. And I know that from what I learned in school, that race came about actually from the European colonizers that came to the Americas. And what they did is that they used race to decide where people fit in their social pyramid in society. And the closer you were to white, the more privileges you had and the higher you were. And so race very much is a social construct. That's what I'm trying to say. Race is very much a social construct based on physical, biological facts, which is your skin tone. But ethnicity, on the other hand, very much speaks to an individual's culture, which is why when you look at surveys, demographic surveys, you see Hispanic under the ethnicities portion, because Hispanic is an ethnicity. It's not a race, because the thing is that within the culture, within the ethnicity of Hispanic, you have different races. You have different people with different skin tones, with different origins. So that's what ethnicity speaks to: one's culture, one's traditions. You know, if someone's going to ask me about my ethnicity, I'm going to tell you that I'm Ghanaian. I'm from Ghana, right? My parents, my whole family is from Ghana. So a lot of my traditions and my values have to do or are based off of the traditions and values that you have, that you see in Ghana. You know what I mean? So that's very much that's the difference between race and ethnicity. And ethnicity doesn't classify someone socially. It doesn't. Race is what classifies. I feel like race, even though we've gotten rid of even though we've gotten rid of the saying that white is superior per se, I feel like because of our history, it's still very much a psychological thing. It's very much a psychological, cycle or thought process that very much dictates the way we communicate with one another. Very much so. Whereas ethnicity, I feel like ethnicity is more individualized and race is more of a society-based thing. That's the difference.
Joanna, you just hit the nail on the coffin. I mean, my goodness, you explained it so well. It's almost like you're in our class. But I think that was a great explanation. I believe that you are correct. Race is predominantly what's on the outside, and ethnicity is what makes up our likeness and uniqueness. But carrying on, I'd like to basically compare that to the reading I had with Charles Taylor, which is The Politics of Recognition. I want to go off his demand for recognition and that it's a vital human need. I think this is really important because, like you said, when Europeans were bringing over slaves from Africa, the way to distinguish one another is by skin tone. So we had the European slave masters who were white, of course, but then we also had the black slaves. So this is how we distinguish between the upper class and the middle class. But I think it's really important because one thing that we don't do is cherish difference. We never have that opportunity to look at both sides of the story and appreciate those for who they are. I mean, now in today's world, if you see on social media, more things are being accepted, such as Black Lives Matter. We're starting to become more accepted as opposed to hundreds and hundreds of years ago when slavery still existed. But first class back then, most of the time would be the white people who were educated, who had privileges, who slept in the mansions and the huge houses, and then you had the minorities, black people, who did not have everything that was supposed to be good in life. So I would like to carry this on by asking you, has there ever been a time you've been ignored or you felt that you were not acknowledged properly, whether it be because of your race or whether it be because, like you said, you're Ghanaian? So does that ever play a factor in the reason why someone might have ignored you? And on the opposite side, have you ever ignored someone else?
I have felt ignored many, many times. And I'm sure if you were to ask this question to everyone, they would also say that they felt ignored many times as well. Even people with the most perfect life feel ignored. And I think it's just because we human beings just tend to be a little bit selfish. Actually, not a little bit. We are very selfish. We're very selfish. I'm going to say we're also egocentric. And so even though we don't mean to, we can very much ignore people. It's not everyone has the things that everyone has their issues. Everyone has things that they're going through. But the reason why we still tend to feel ignored is because we don't pay attention also to other people's issues. We're so consumed by our own issues that people are also suffering, even more than you, but you feel like your problem is just like such a big one. That's why people end up feeling ignored. It's not necessarily something we do on purpose. Sometimes we do it on purpose. Sometimes when we think people are annoying, we ignore them. When people are I guess calling, like hitting you up, and it's like you see who's calling and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get it later, kind of like that. So sometimes we do it on purpose, but I feel like most of the time I feel like we tend not to do it on purpose, and we just end up ignoring people. I felt, as I've said, I felt ignored many times. Usually when you feel ignored, it's by people that you love, because it tends to hurt, right? That's when you notice it. When it's people that you love that ignore you. My parents, I feel like, have ignored me. Some of my siblings have ignored me. My friends have ignored me. But my story is not different from a lot of people's stories. Everyone has felt ignored at some point. And it's just part of life. Yeah. I have most definitely ignored people before. Based on what I just said, most of the time I've done it subconsciously. So if I were to try and think about specific times, it's kind of hard. I do have a specific time and point now. In mind, sorry. I have a specific time in mind and a specific person who I believe I've ignored. And it wasn't on purpose. As I said, it's subconscious. I realized that I think I was ignoring this person when I was just one day I was thinking about life, and I was like, wow, I haven't spoken to this person in a long time, and we're supposed to be close. We're supposed to be close. We're family, actually, is what we are. We're family, and I feel like I haven't been as present for this person as I should have been, right? And it's not because, as I said, I've done it on purpose. It's more so because I haven't prioritized him enough. I haven't prioritized him enough. It's like anytime when he wants to talk, usually I say I'm busy, and I believe I'm busy. Thing is that we're always gonna be busy. That's life. We're always gonna be busy. What we have to do is set apart time. If you want to get anything done, you have to set time apart so you can get that thing done. And I wasn't setting apart time for this individual. I wasn't. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll get back to him later, and I would forget. Why? Because, as I said, I didn't prioritize him. What happened as a result? What happened was our relationship is not as good as it could be. We are still pretty close, but I feel like some things he won't open up to me about, because we are because, as I said, I've ignored him a lot of the time. Sometimes I feel like ignoring isn't just not talking to somebody, it's very much not being attentive when you guys do talk. When you're not being present with them, that is also ignoring. It's also subconscious, very much so. But as I said, if you prioritize this person, or if you see this person as, if you value your relationship with the person enough that you set it high in your book, then when you guys are having one-on-one, you're going to be present, right? You're going to be very present. So yeah.
After being in this class, I've learned a lot. So Joanna, you are just on a roll. I mean, my goodness. I kind of wish you were in this class I took, because you would give such a different aspect that not too many people would be comfortable talking about or comfortable even mentioning. So you bring up so many great points as far as being ignored for how you are and also ignoring other people. But this reminds me of another read that I was looking at during the class. It's called How to Tame a Wild Tongue. And the author, Gloria Anzaldúa, actually had this same scenario where everywhere she went growing up, whether it be at the dentist, whether she was in school, whether even sometimes in her family, oftentimes she would be kind of casted aside because she represented where she came from correctly, which is speaking the native language, Spanish. And even though she lived in the country, America, it was hard because a lot of people were very inconsiderate and biased towards those who spoke another language. So in today's world, we have this scenario. It's not as bad as it was before, of course, just like all the instances I've been bringing up. But I think it's really important to know that language is something that helps honor one's identity. And this is something that she understood. This is something that, looking at both sides of the story, being in this class, was something that I started to understand better. And respecting those for all of what they believe in, respecting you for your heritage, respecting me for my heritage, respecting everyone from different walks of life and in their backgrounds. So they pretty much wanted her to stop speaking her style of Spanish. And to her, I'm sure that must have been very, very painful, because you've been doing this your entire life. And then imagine someone told me, stop speaking English. That's just ridiculous. I mean, I grew up speaking this language. Why would I stop now? So there's so many points you touched up on, Joanna, and I mean, it can go on and on. Like, honestly, I'll bring up another point, because it's important to understand that with identity, I was reading one of the stories by Kwame Appiah, and he was basically talking about, not only is there a metaphysical part of yourself, which means you have your personal body, and then you also have the spiritual side, which is kind of like a collecting surrounding of who you are, meaning your mind, what you're thinking, what your intent is. So there's two different sides of the story here, where we might have, maybe your body is saying yes to something, but your mind might be telling you no. So you're at a conflict of interest there. So I wanted to ask you, Joanna, how do you feel about this? Do you believe in Appiah's truth to identity? Do you believe that there are two parts to our personal bodies? Do you believe in a mind processing and then a body processing? Or do you just think this is all a myth? Do you not believe this?
Okay, yeah, this may be my favorite question. Yes, everyone does have a body and everyone has a spirit. Now, the body's easy, we all see it. The spirit, though, is on the inside. And the reason why I know everyone has a spirit is because when we die, right, you see, if anyone's seen a dead person looks like they're just sleeping. Honestly, they look very, very, very peaceful. But when you touch them, though, they're very cold. They can look ashen. Why? Because the life is gone. Why is the life gone? Because that person's spirit has gone. I feel like a lot of people believe that, I'm seeing now more days, a lot of people believe that we do have spirits. And that's one thing that we used to comfort ourselves, right? In a time of death, you know, that person is resting in peace. Resting where? You know, a lot of people say, you know, that person is not my guardian angel. You know what I'm saying? So why? Because that person has a spirit. That person is very much still alive, but just not on the earth. Very much not on the earth. And if we didn't have spirits, we would honestly be like just like animals. I feel like because of that spirit we have, everybody, every human being has a purpose. Every human being has a divine purpose. Divine meaning set by God. God, I'm talking about Jesus. Everyone has a purpose. And we're not just here to have fun and go, right? We're not just here for that. Everyone has a body, everyone has a spirit. And there's a reason why, as I said, when people die, we say they're no longer with us. You know, I feel like innately, everyone knows we have a spirit, right? Everyone knows has a spirit because the spirit very much has to do with our emotions, very much has to do with our souls, right? Yeah.
Well, Joanna, you have great analysis, but I just wanted to say I thank you for coming on the show today. I wish you nothing but the best, and I will talk to you soon. But that is all the time we have, folks, today. Thank you for tuning in to the Masculine and Feminine Podcast. I'm your host, Maximilian Robinson, and I hope you have a good day. Stay tuned to our next episode.